Elena had lived most of her life on the quiet edge of the desert, where the golden sand met the tall grasslands of Arizona. People in her Apache community spoke of her with respect. They admired her calm spirit, her steady hands, and the quiet courage she carried in every step. She had survived many difficult seasons, including the loss of her husband years earlier. Even though she never spoke much about her grief, everyone understood it still lived inside her. Soft but heavy, like a stone resting under the heart. Most days, Elena kept herself busy with simple tasks. She gathered herbs, tended to her small garden, and helped her neighbors when their animals or tools needed attention. She did not avoid people, but she did not offer pieces of her heart easily either. Many men admired her gentle nature, her warm eyes, and the care she put into every action. But she made it clear she was not looking for companionship. Not yet. Perhaps not ever. She had loved deeply once, and losing that love had taught her how fragile affection could be. One bright morning, when the sun was just starting to warm the earth, Elena set off toward a nearby trading post with her old wooden wagon. It was a simple trip she had made many times before. As she guided the horse along the narrow road, she hummed a tune her grandmother once sang. But halfway through the journey, the wagon suddenly made a loud cracking sound. The wheel jerked sideways, and the horse stopped in confusion. Elena stepped down to take a closer look and found that a wooden spoke had snapped. She sighed, not in fear or frustration, but in acceptance. The desert often broke things. Wood cracked, leather dried, metal bent. It was simply the nature of the land. She knelt to inspect the damage, brushing sand off the wheel when she heard the sound of hooves approaching in the distance. A tall man on horseback slowed as he neared her. His hat was dusty, and his clothes were worn but clean. His face held a friendly, open expression, like someone who had met many people on the road and had learned to greet all of them kindly. This was Samuel Reed, a cowboy who had been traveling from ranch to ranch looking for honest work and a quiet place where he could rest longer than a week. When Samuel saw Elena beside the broken wheel, he gently pulled on the reins and stopped a few feet away. "Good morning, ma'am," he said in a polite, gentle tone. "Looks like you've got a bit of trouble there. Do you need a hand?" Elena studied him carefully. She had learned long ago to read people within seconds. His posture was relaxed. His eyes held no impatience or hidden motives, only genuine willingness to help. Still, she chose her words with care. "The wheel broke," she said. "I can fix it, but it may take a while." Samuel dismounted with easy movements, like he had done it 1,000 times. "If you don't mind, I can help make it quicker," he offered. "I know a thing or two about wheels. They like to give up on me at the worst times." Elena paused. She rarely accepted help from strangers, but his calm presence made her feel safe. She nodded. "All right." Together, they lifted the wagon slightly and removed the broken wheel. Samuel found a spare piece of wood in the wagon and shaped it with a small knife, carefully fitting it into place. Elena watched his hands as he worked. He was patient, not rushing even though the sun was growing hotter. When he tightened the wheel back onto the wagon, he stepped away and wiped his forehead. "There," he said with a small smile. "It should hold until you get home." Elena tested the wheel, pressing down and turning it. Samuel tipped his hat. "Happy to help. I'm heading toward the trading post too, if you'd like company on the way." "But only if you're comfortable with that." Elena hesitated, not because she felt unsure of him, but because she was not used to sharing the road with strangers anymore. Still, she sensed something honest about this cowboy, something warm, something steady. Finally, she gave a small nod. "You can ride with me." As they traveled, a quiet rhythm settled between them. Samuel rode beside the wagon, letting the horse walk slowly so he wouldn't move ahead of her. The desert stretched in all directions, shimmering under the growing heat. At first, they exchanged only simple words, comments about the weather, the road, or the busy season ahead. But little by little, the silence grew comfortable, like two travelers who didn't need to impress each other. After a while, Samuel asked, "Do you live near here?" "Yes," Elena replied softly. My family has been here for generations. That must be nice, he said, to have a place that has always been yours. Elena didn't answer right away. She thought of her late husband, of the life they once built together. She thought of the quiet evenings by the fire, the laughter, the plans they made. It is a gift, she finally said, but sometimes even a familiar place can feel too quiet. Samuel nodded, understanding more than she expected. I know that feeling, he said. I've been moving from place to place for years. I thought traveling would make me feel free. But sometimes, all it does is remind me that I don't really belong anywhere. Elena turned her gaze toward him. She saw a softness beneath his rough appearance, a loneliness he tried to cover with friendliness. She didn't ask questions, but she felt a small shift inside her, an unexpected connection forming between them. They reached the trading post soon after, and Elena bought the supplies she needed. Samuel carried her heavy sacks to the wagon without being asked, and she allowed him to. Surprised at how naturally the act felt, before they parted, he smiled and said, "If you ever need help again, I'll be working at the West Ranch for a while. You're welcome to stop by." Elena thanked him and drove away. But she could feel his presence lingering in her mind long after the trading post disappeared behind her. She had not expected to meet anyone that day who would stay with her in thought. She had not expected a cowboy with warm eyes and a gentle voice to shift something inside her heart, even if only slightly. Days passed, and Elena returned to her usual routines. But small memories of Samuel rose in her mind, the way he had spoken with honesty, the way he respected her space, the easy way he smiled. She brushed the thoughts away whenever they came, reminding herself that she had closed that part of her heart long ago. She did not want to risk caring for someone only to face loss again, but life has a quiet way of guiding hearts back toward connection, even when they resist. And those simple moments on the desert road had planted a seed that neither she nor Samuel fully understood yet. Elena sensed that her path had crossed his for a reason, even if that reason was not clear. She sensed that this cowboy, this traveler who carried both kindness and loneliness, was someone whose presence would stir her quiet world in ways she could not predict. And though she tried to hold on to the comfort of her solitude, she knew one thing for certain. The meeting on the dusty road was only the beginning of a story neither of them had expected, with slow changes in both Samuel's and Elena's lives. Changes neither of them expected, but both somehow welcomed. After their first meeting on the dusty road, Samuel settled into his work at the West Ranch. The ranch was peaceful, with wide open fields that glowed in the morning sun. He spent his days guiding cattle, mending fences, carrying water, and helping with small chores. Though the work was tiring, it kept his hands busy and his heart steady. But even in the middle of his chores, his mind often drifted to Elena, the Apache widow with calm eyes, soft steps, and a strong spirit he admired more than he dared to admit. Samuel had met many people on his travels, but something about Elena stayed with him. He remembered how quietly she listened, how thoughtfully she spoke, and how gently she moved. He also remembered that she was guarded, like someone who had learned to protect herself from disappointment. He respected that. He didn't push his thoughts too far. He simply allowed the memory of her presence to bring him small comfort when days felt long. Meanwhile, Elena continued her routine in the village. The people in her community began to notice she smiled a little more often, though she didn't seem aware of it herself. She still worked in her garden, still prepared herbs, and still tended to the needs of neighbors. Yet sometimes, when she sat alone in the quiet of her home, she found her mind wandering back to the cowboy who had appeared so unexpectedly that day. She tried to brush the thought away, reminding herself she wasn't seeking companionship. Still, a gentle curiosity settled inside her, like a soft breeze she couldn't control. One warm afternoon, while she gathered wild sage near the open fields, Elena noticed a familiar figure riding toward her. Samuel's horse moved at an easy pace, as though sensing the peacefulness of the moment. When Samuel came close, he lifted his hat and gave her a shy, genuine smile. "Good afternoon, Elena," he said. "I wasn't sure if you'd be out this way." Elena nodded politely. I gather herbs here. The season is good. Samuel dismounted, letting his horse rest near a patch of tall grass. Do you mind if I help? He asked. I won't get in the way. Elena considered his request. She didn't need help, but she also didn't feel uncomfortable around him. His presence was warm, not heavy. She gave a small nod. You may help if you like. Together, they gathered sage leaves and small bundles of desert flowers. Samuel watched how carefully she handled each plant, how respectfully she treated the earth. He admired her quiet attention and tried to match her gentleness, though he was not used to such delicate work. After a while, she noticed how awkwardly he held the plants, and she smiled just a little. You don't have to be nervous, she said softly. Plants don't mind clumsy hands. Samuel chuckled. I'm better with ropes than flowers. I can see that, she replied, her tone warm. Their small conversation made something inside him relax, something that had been tight for years. He told her stories from his travels, nothing dramatic, just small moments he remembered from different towns. A bakery run by a cheerful old couple, a horse that used to steal apples from his pocket, a boy who had asked him endless questions about cowboy life. Elena listened quietly, occasionally asking a gentle question. Her voice carried a soothing calmness that made every memory feel lighter. As the sun began to set, they packed the herbs together. Thank you for helping, Elena said. It made the work easier. I should thank you, Samuel replied. You made the day nicer. She looked at him with a brief, thoughtful expression, then nodded and turned to guide her horse home. Samuel watched her for a moment, not wanting the moment to end but respecting her need for space. He mounted his horse and rode back toward the ranch, feeling an unusual softness settle in his chest. Over the next several weeks, their paths crossed again, sometimes by chance, sometimes because both of them found quiet reasons to be in the same places. At the trading post, Elena would find Samuel there, buying feed or rope. On the open road, Samuel would pass by just as Elena walked to visit a nearby family. They greeted each other with easy smiles, and the people around them began to notice the quiet connection forming between them. But in small communities, whispers traveled quickly. Some townspeople started discussing Samuel's past, adding details to stories they only half knew. They said he had a reputation for charming women during his travels, that he was friendly with too many people, that he didn't stay in one place long enough to form real bonds. Most of it was exaggerated, shaped by assumptions rather than truth. But gossip, even when soft, can grow roots. One afternoon, Elena overheard two women speaking near the trading post doorway. That cowboy seems friendly with everyone, one woman said. I bet he says sweet things to every girl he meets. One, I've heard he never stays long, the other replied. People like that don't look for real connection. The words settled into Elena like dust on clean water. She did not want them to affect her, but they did. She had already been careful with her heart. Now she became even more cautious. She remembered the pain she carried, the one she kept hidden, the one that whispered warnings whenever she grew too comfortable with someone. Later that week, when Samuel approached her after finishing his ranch work, she felt herself growing distant, without meaning to. He noticed immediately. Her smile was smaller, her answers shorter, her steps quieter. Is something wrong? He asked gently. No, she replied, though her voice lacked its usual softness. I am just tired today. Samuel didn't push. He respected her boundaries, even ones he didn't understand. If you ever want company, he said, I'm always nearby. Elena nodded but didn't meet his eyes. He walked away feeling uncertain, wondering if he had done or said something to change her warmth toward him. As the days passed, their interactions grew shorter. Elena found herself torn between her growing trust in Samuel and the fear that he might simply be passing through her life, leaving memories but not promises. Her heart had learned to be careful. It had learned that affection could be gentle at first and painful later. One morning, while mending a small tear in her blanket, she paused and set the cloth aside. She wondered if she was being unfair, Samuel had never given her any reason not to trust him. Every word he spoke was kind. Every action was respectful. He never pushed her, never hurried her, never stepped beyond the boundaries she kept. Still, the old worries pressed into her like a soft shadow. At the ranch, Samuel noticed her distance growing. He didn't want to interrupt her life, but he also couldn't deny that he cared for her more than he had planned. He found himself watching the road that led from her village, hoping she might pass by. When she didn't, he continued working but felt a quiet ache he didn't speak aloud. Weeks went by this way, Elena holding back, Samuel wondering why. Their conversations became brief, polite, and filled with unfinished thoughts. Yet, neither of them was able to completely turn away. Something still connected them, even through the silence they didn't know how to explain. One late afternoon, Elena sat near the riverbank, watching the gentle reflection of the sky dance on the water. She wondered whether her fear was guiding her too strongly. She remembered Samuel's thoughtful eyes, his steady way of speaking, the care in his hands when he fixed her wagon wheel, the humility in how he listened. She also remembered the whispers she had heard, but whispers were not truth. And deep inside her heart, she knew she should trust her own understanding more than the echo of other people's voices. At the same time, Samuel sat alone near the ranch fence, thinking about the quiet change he felt from her. He did not blame her. He sensed she carried a history that shaped the way she moved through the world. He wished he could tell her more of his own story, how he wasn't someone who drifted because he wanted to, but because he had never found a place where he truly felt welcome. Both of them wanted to speak the truths they held inside, but neither knew how or when. What neither realized yet was that their silence was not an ending. It was the beginning of a bigger turning point waiting just ahead. One that would change both of their lives in ways they could not predict. The days grew warmer as the season slowly shifted, and the land around Elena and Samuel softened with early signs of summer. The long grasses near the river turned a brighter green. Birds returned with their gentle songs, and even the dusty roads felt kinder under the steady sunlight. But inside both of them, warmth and confusion mixed in ways they didn't know how to name. Elena continued her daily tasks, yet her thoughts wandered more than before. She felt the distance she had created between herself and Samuel, and the distance sat heavy on her chest. She had not meant to pull away from him, but the whispers she heard, and the old fear inside her heart, had woven a quiet wall between them. She wished she could explain it to herself, let alone to him. Samuel, on the other hand, carried his thoughts quietly while he worked at the ranch. He woke early each morning, guided the horses, checked the fences, and spoke kindly to the other workers. He did everything he needed to do, but his heart felt unsettled, like something important had been left unfinished. He missed the easy talks he once shared with Elena, the soft look in her eyes when she listened, the calm comfort of her presence. He wondered if he had done something wrong, something he could not see. One late afternoon, when the sky was turning gold, Samuel decided he couldn't continue living with questions. He needed clarity. He needed to understand what had changed between them. And more than anything, he needed to tell her the truth of his feelings, even if it frightened him. He hoped she would listen. He hoped she would not walk away. Elena, at that same moment, was returning from a neighbor's home, carrying a small basket of dried herbs she had prepared earlier. The path toward her house was quiet, and the breeze carried the faint scent of warm earth. She walked slowly, deep in thought, unaware that Samuel was already approaching the village, guided by the same desire to speak openly. The sun dipped behind a cluster of clouds as Samuel rode closer, and his heart beat a little faster. Not from fear, but from the weight of everything he had been holding inside. When he reached the quiet edge of the village, he spotted Elena walking along the dusty path. She looked peaceful, yet distant, her steps steady but her gaze far away. Samuel dismounted and called her name softly, not wanting to startle her. Elena turned, and for a moment they simply looked at each other, two hearts full of unspoken words, two souls unsure of how to close the gap between them. "Samuel," Elena said quietly, her tone calm but uncertain. "You came a long way today." "I needed to talk to you," he replied, his eyes gentle. "If that's all right." Elena hesitated. Part of her wanted to walk away, to protect herself from a conversation she feared might open old wounds. But the other part, stronger, quieter, wiser, told her to listen. Samuel had never given her a reason to distrust him. She nodded slowly. We can talk. They walked to a small shaded area near a group of trees, where the wind moved softly through the leaves. Samuel took a breath, gathering his thoughts. Elena, he began, I know something has changed between us, and I don't know why, but I want to understand. If I've done something to upset you, please tell me. Elena held the basket close to her chest. She looked down at her hands, unsure how to explain the complicated knot inside her. After a long silence, she finally spoke. I heard people talking, she said softly. They said you have been close to many people. They said you don't stay in one place very long. And it made me wonder. It made me question what you want from me. Samuel's eyebrows lowered in surprise, not anger, but confusion. People say many things, he said gently. Not all of them are true. I know, Elena whispered. But the things I heard brought back old fears. What fears? He asked kindly. She looked away toward the open sky, her eyes soft with memories she rarely shared. I have cared for someone deeply before, she said. And when that love ended, my heart learned to protect itself. I don't want to be someone's passing thought, someone's temporary comfort. I can't carry that kind of hurt again. Samuel listened with quiet respect. He didn't interrupt. He didn't rush her. When she finished, he stepped closer. Not too close, but close enough for her to feel his sincerity. Elena, he said softly, I don't want anything temporary with you. I don't want your company for only a little while. I don't want your presence just for comfort. I want to truly know you, to understand you, to build something honest with you, even if it takes years. You are not someone I could forget. Elena's breath trembled slightly, but she held herself steady. The emotion in Samuel's voice reached her heart, yet the old fear still whispered inside her ear. She needed more truth. She needed more clarity. So she lowered her basket, lifted her gaze, and asked the question that had been weighing on her soul, a question that carried both her fear and her strength, her doubt and her desire for truth. Samuel, she said softly, do you only want my body? The air around them stilled. The wind quieted. Time seemed to pause between those few words, and the moment Samuel processed them, he stared at her with startled eyes, not offended, not angry, but surprised at the depth of her worry. Elena, he said gently, I would never see you that way. But before he could say more, before he could express everything he had been holding in his heart, something inside him shifted unexpectedly. A sudden wave of discomfort spread across his chest, his breathing grew uneven, and his vision blurred slightly. He reached for the nearest tree to steady himself, thinking it was just exhaustion from the long ride and the day's heat. Elena noticed immediately. Her heart tightened with concern. She stepped forward, her voice filled with worry. Samuel? Are you all right? He tried to answer, but his breath came shallow. The warmth of the day, the long work hours, the stress he had carried quietly for weeks, they all pressed down on him at once. His heartbeat fluttered in an unfamiliar, unsteady rhythm. He felt lightheaded, as if the ground beneath him tilted slightly. I just need a moment, he murmured, trying to force a steady breath, but his body disagreed. Elena reached out, placing a gentle hand on his arm. Sit, she whispered. Please sit. He lowered himself carefully onto the ground, leaning against the tree. His face grew pale, and his breaths came quicker. Elena knelt beside him, her calm nature rising even through the growing fear in her heart. Stay with me, she said softly. Look at me. Samuel tried to focus on her eyes, but his vision dimmed around the edges. The moment felt unreal to him. He had come to tell her the truth, to open his heart. But now his own body felt weak in a way he had never experienced before. Elena rested her hand gently over his, grounding him with her steady presence. You are tired, she said softly, her voice warm and soothing. You have pushed yourself too much. Breathe slowly, Samuel. I am here. Samuel tried to speak, but all that came out was a faint whisper. I didn't mean to worry you. You're not worrying me, she said, though her eyes shimmered with quiet fear she tried to hide. You're reminding me how much your presence matters. He closed his eyes for a moment, focusing on the rhythm of her voice, letting it guide his breath. Slowly, the dizziness eased just enough for him to speak again. Elena, he murmured, I meant what I said. I want something real with you. Nothing else. She nodded, brushing her hand gently along his forearm, a silent promise she didn't yet know how to put into words. She was scared of losing him, scared of caring too much, scared of the very connection she had been trying to avoid. But seeing him like this made her heart ache with clarity. She did care for him, deeply. As Samuel leaned back, catching slow breaths, Elena stayed beside him, offering calm, comfort, and quiet words. The moment was fragile, unusual, unexpected, but it also opened the door to emotions they could no longer hide. Samuel's heartbeat slowly steadied, though he remained weak. Elena realized he needed more help than she alone could give. But first, she wanted him to feel safe, supported, and understood. Their conversation was not finished. Their story was not finished. Something meaningful had begun that neither of them could deny anymore. And as the sky shifted into evening, their hearts shifted too, toward truth, toward connection, and toward a future neither of them had imagined when they first met on a dusty road. The soft glow of evening spread across the land as Elena knelt beside Samuel, trying to keep her own growing fear from showing on her face. Though his breathing had steadied slightly, his weakness was clear. He leaned back against the tree, eyes half open, his chest rising gently but unevenly, like a tired traveler struggling to finish one last step of a long journey. Elena stayed close, her hand lightly pressed against his forearm, offering a comfort she hoped could reach his heart. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The quiet around them felt almost protective, as if the wind itself slowed to give them space. Elena studied his face carefully. She had seen tired people before, seen men return from long travels or difficult work, but she had never seen Samuel like this, so still, so pale, so vulnerable. A weight settled in her heart, a mixture of worry and something deeper, something she had tried to ignore but could no longer deny. Samuel opened his eyes and tried to smile. It was faint, but full of warmth. I'm all right, he whispered, though the tremble in his voice proved otherwise. Elena shook her head softly. You don't need to pretend, she said. Let yourself rest. He let out a slow breath, grateful for her gentle honesty. I think I worked too hard this week, he said. I should have taken better care of myself. Elena gave him a look filled with understanding. You carry too much alone, she replied. Your body is speaking for you now. Samuel closed his eyes again. I just didn't want you to worry. I already do, she said quietly, surprising herself with the truth of it. The words hung between them, tender and sincere. Elena knew he needed more help than she could give under the shade of a tree. The nearest small clinic was several miles away. But she also knew she could not leave him alone like this. She needed to act, but she also needed to keep him calm. Rushing would only frighten him. She had to be both gentle and steady. Like her ancestors taught her, she guided her hand to his shoulder. Samuel, she said softly, I'm going to bring help, but I don't want to leave you alone. Can you stay awake for a moment while I call for someone nearby? There are people close? He asked slowly. Yes. She nodded. A ranch hand passes this road at this time. I can call to him. But you must stay awake. Samuel tried to straighten himself, though it took effort. I'll try. Elena rose carefully, making sure not to move too fast. She stepped toward the open road and scanned the horizon. The sunset painted the sky in shades of pink and gold, and the quiet land stretched out before her. She listened, focusing past the soft rustling of leaves, past the whisper of the breeze. Then she heard the distant sound of a horse trotting. It was someone from the West Ranch. Elena cupped her hands around her mouth and called out clearly, her voice carrying across the field. The rider slowed, then hurried toward her once he heard the concern in her tone. When he arrived, she quickly and calmly explained Samuel's condition. The ranch hand nodded without hesitation and said he would bring a wagon at once. When Elena returned to Samuel's side, she knelt again beside him. His breathing had calmed slightly, but fatigue still rested heavy on his face. He looked up at her, a mix of worry and trust in his eyes. "Help is coming," she said gently. "Just breathe slowly." "I'm sorry," he murmured. "I didn't expect this to happen today." Elena touched his hand lightly, her voice soft but firm. "You don't need to apologize for being human." Her words brought a small, grateful smile to his lips. He looked at her with a tenderness he had been holding inside for weeks. Despite the weakness in his body, his eyes were full of meaning, full of something true. "Elena," he said softly, "I meant everything I told you earlier." She felt her heart tighten in a way that was both painful and comforting. "I know," she whispered, "and I heard you." Before more could be said, the sound of wagon wheels approached. The ranch hand returned with a simple wooden cart lined with soft blankets. Elena helped guide Samuel to sit up. She wrapped one arm around him, steady and patient, supporting him until he was settled safely in the wagon. He tried to help, but she could feel how tired his movements were. Once he was seated, Samuel looked at her with quiet worry. "You'll come with me?" he asked. It was a question filled with fear, the fear of being left alone, the fear that their important conversation would fade into the chaos of the evening. Elena placed a gentle hand on his arm. "I'm not leaving you," she said. "I'll be right beside you." His shoulders relaxed, and he closed his eyes for a moment, comforted by her promise. The wagon began moving toward the small clinic, its wheels softly rolling over the earth. Elena sat beside Samuel, keeping her hand near his, ready to offer reassurance whenever he needed it. The ride was long but calm. The sky shifted from warm gold to soft blue, then to the first hints of night. Stars began appearing above them. Twinkling like small lanterns of hope, Samuel rested his head lightly against the edge of the cart. His breaths grew steadier, though the tiredness stayed. Elena watched over him, adjusting his blanket. When the breeze grew cool, brushing hair gently from his forehead when it fell over his eyes. Her care was quiet, natural, and filled with a tenderness even she didn't fully understand yet. When they reached the small clinic, the doctor greeted them with concern. He examined Samuel, speaking calmly to keep him relaxed. Elena stayed nearby, quietly answering questions about what had happened, never once stepping away. The doctor explained that Samuel had pushed himself too hard, too many days of heat, not enough rest or water, and too much emotional strain. The combination had overwhelmed his body. But with proper care, the doctor assured them, he would recover. Samuel was guided to a small room with clean sheets and a simple cot. Once he was settled, Elena stood beside him, watching as a gentle lamp lit the room with warm light. Samuel looked up at her, still tired but calmer now. "You don't have to stay," he whispered. "You've done so much already." Elena shook her head. "I don't want to leave." "Why?" he asked softly, not as a challenge, but as someone needing reassurance. She took a slow breath, meeting his eyes with quiet honesty. "Because you matter to me," she said, "more than I was ready to admit." Samuel's eyes softened. For a moment, he couldn't speak. His heart felt full, but not heavy this time, full in a way he had never experienced before. He reached out, his hand shaking slightly, and Elena gently placed her hand over his. "You're safe now," she said. "Rest." He nodded, letting his eyes close, trusting her presence in a way he had never trusted anyone. Elena stayed by his side, sitting in the small wooden chair next to the bed. She watched over him as he drifted into sleep, his breathing slowly becoming deeper, steadier, and calmer. Every rise and fall of his chest eased the worry inside her heart. The night grew quiet. The faint sound of wind brushed against the windows, and the stars outside shone softly. Elena stayed awake for a long time, thinking about the unexpected journey that brought them here. She realized that fear had guided her for too long. She realized she didn't want to live behind walls built from old pain. Samuel had shown her patience, kindness, sincerity, and now, seeing him resting peacefully, she understood the depth of what she felt. This was more than simple concern. This was more than friendship. It was a feeling that reached deep into her heart, touching places she had hidden for years. She whispered softly, though he was already asleep, "You matter to me, Samuel. Truly." And in that quiet room, with moonlight touching the edges of the walls, Elena's heart finally opened to the possibility of love again. The soft morning light entered the small clinic room slowly, spreading across the wooden floor and climbing gently up the walls. It touched Samuel's face first, warming his skin and inviting his tired eyes to open. He blinked weakly at the brightness, then turned his head slightly. The first thing he saw was Elena sitting beside his bed, her hands folded in her lap, her posture calm and steady. She had fallen asleep in the wooden chair sometime during the night, her head resting lightly against the wall, her long hair falling over her shoulder like a curtain of midnight. Samuel felt a deep warmth in his chest, one that came not from the sun, but from seeing her there, loyal and patient, even after such a long and difficult night. He remembered their conversation beneath the trees, the sudden weakness in his body, the way she held his hand, the worry in her eyes. And now, here she was still, watching over him like a soft, protective light. He shifted slightly, and the movement caused Elena to stir. Her eyes opened slowly, adjusting to the morning glow. When she saw Samuel awake, a gentle relief washed over her features. "You're awake," she said softly. Samuel nodded, offering a small, grateful smile. "Thanks to you. You're feeling better?" she asked, leaning forward with concern. "A little," he said honestly. "Still tired, but better than yesterday." Elena reached out and touched his hand lightly, checking that his skin felt warm and steady. "That's good," she said. "You scared me yesterday." He looked at her with deep sincerity. "I scared myself too. I didn't know my body was that tired." "You carry too much inside you," she replied gently. "Your heart needed rest." Samuel looked into her eyes and saw something new there, something soft and unguarded, something hopeful. The wall she once kept around her heart seemed thinner now, no longer built with fear but with careful understanding. "Elena," he said quietly, "I'm sorry you had to see me like that." "Lena." She shook her head and gave a small smile. "I'm not. Sometimes we need moments like these to show us what truly matters." Her words settled deep inside him. He understood exactly what she meant. Because lying there, feeling weak and vulnerable, had shown him how deeply he relied on her presence, not because he needed saving, but because he felt safe with her in ways he never had before. A short while later, the doctor entered to check on Samuel. He smiled at the improvement and explained that Samuel simply needed rest, water, and a few days away from heavy work. "You'll be fine," the doctor assured him. "But take it easy." Samuel nodded, grateful. Elena thanked the doctor. And after he left, she helped Samuel sit up a bit straighter. She tucked a pillow behind his back, careful not to cause any discomfort. Samuel watched her with quiet admiration, noticing how gentle her touch was, how thoughtful her movements were. "You don't have to take care of me like this," he said softly. She met his gaze, her expression warm and honest. "I want to." Those simple words struck him deeper than he expected. He reached out and took her hand gently, careful not to pull her closer too fast. He wanted her to come closer by choice, not by fear or pressure. "Elena," he said quietly, "I thought you might walk away after what I said yesterday." Her gaze softened. "I almost did," she admitted. "Not because of you, but because of old memories I still carry. But when I saw you fall weak, something inside me changed. I realized I was letting fear decide my life. And fear never brings comfort." He held her hand a little tighter. "I don't want to be something you're afraid of." "You aren't," she said gently. "Not anymore." A calm silence settled between them. It wasn't the uncomfortable silence they had shared during the weeks of distance. This one felt peaceful, like two hearts finally resting after a long journey of confusion. As the hours passed, sunlight filled the room with warmth. Elena stayed at Samuel's side, talking with him softly about simple things, her herbs, his work, the village, the seasons. They laughed gently at small stories, shared quiet smiles, and rediscovered the ease they once had before fear stepped between them. In the afternoon, when Samuel felt strong enough, they moved outside for fresh air. Elena supported him carefully, and they walked slowly to a bench near the clinic's garden. The flowers there were bright and welcoming, releasing soft fragrances into the warm air. Samuel closed his eyes for a moment, breathing deeply, grateful for the new strength returning to him. "Thank you for staying," he said again, breaking the silence. Elena looked at him with a calm expression. "I stayed because I care. And I want you to know that." He turned his head toward her. "I care too," he said. "More than I've cared for anyone in a very long time." Protected Idiar. She felt her heart flutter gently, but it was no longer fear, it was something warm, something hopeful. "I believe you," she whispered. They sat together for a long time, watching the gentle movement of the garden. Life around them seemed to mirror their own hearts, flowers blooming slowly, quietly, carefully, just as trust was blooming between them. In the days that followed, Samuel grew stronger. Elena visited him every morning and evening, bringing him fresh herbs, warm tea, and quiet stories. They talked more deeply now about their pasts, their hopes, their fears. Samuel shared how loneliness had followed him from town to town, how he had longed for a place where his heart could rest. Elena shared how losing someone had taught her to guard herself, how she had forgotten what it felt like to let someone close. These conversations didn't heal them instantly, but they stitched their worlds together, thread by careful thread. When Samuel was finally well enough to leave the clinic, Elena helped him walk outside. The sun was bright, the sky clear, and the wind gentle. He paused for a moment, taking in the view, then turned to her. "Elena," he said softly, "will you walk with me?" She nodded with a gentle smile. "Always." They walked toward her village first, taking slow steps along the dusty path that had first brought them together. Samuel looked around, feeling something he hadn't felt in years, a sense of belonging, as if the land itself welcomed him. Elena felt something too, a quiet peace she hadn't known she was missing. When they reached the village, several people greeted them with warm smiles. No one gossiped now. No one whispered. They saw only the truth in front of them. A cowboy and an Apache widow, walking side by side, their steps in rhythm, their hearts aligned in gentle understanding. At Elena's home, she prepared a small meal. They ate together, talking softly, occasionally falling into comfortable silence. Samuel looked around her home and felt something settle inside him, something steady and grounding. "This feels like home," he said quietly. Elena paused, surprised by the honesty in his voice. Then she smiled. "Maybe it can be," she said. "If you choose it." Samuel's heart filled at her words. He reached across the small table and gently touched her hand. Elena didn't pull away this time. She let her fingers rest in his, warm and trusting. "I choose it," he said softly. "I choose you." Elena felt tears gather in her eyes. Not from sadness, but from relief. Relief that she could feel deeply again, that she could trust again, that she could love again. "And I choose you," she whispered. Outside, the wind moved through the tall grass, carrying the promise of new beginnings. The land seemed to embrace their joined hands. The sky seemed to open wider, and the path ahead of them felt bright with possibility. Their story had begun in uncertainty, shaped by fear and misunderstanding. But it now found its resting place in truth, compassion, and quiet love. Together, they stepped into their new beginning, not rushed, not forced, but steady and honest, like the gentle beating of two hearts, finally moving in harmony. And from that day forward, Samuel and Elena walked side by side, choosing each other again and again, building a life filled with trust, understanding, and the peaceful warmth of love that arrived not suddenly, but beautifully, at exactly the right time.